Week 14 is upon us, and here's a few tight ends that shouldn't be part of your roster heading into Week 14. The first guy is Hayden Hurst of the Atlanta Falcons. Hurst now, he's been inconsistent the last few weeks, and another bad ball game for him it was in Week 13 versus the New Orleans Saints. 1 catch for 9 yards on 4 targets. Julio Jones is back. He looked good. And Hurst now the last 3 weeks, the numbers haven't been there or the stats. In Week 11, no fantasy points on 2 targets. Week 12 versus the Raiders, a basic ball game, 4 catches, 48 yards. And then this week, like I said, 1 catch for 9 yards. Hayden Hurst, he was a guy that's in my top 15 the rest of the season. I had him ranked number 14, so check that out. Tight ends rankings rest of the season video. You'll get good information there. But Hurst, anyway, he's just not getting the job done. His targets are inconsistent. The Falcons, they got a bunch of other guys ahead of him in the pecking order. And this is a guy I'm probably going to steer away from, even though I like his matchup here in Week 14 versus the Chargers, who give up the 9th most fantasy points to tight ends. But Hurst, he's just been inconsistent. And this tight end position, for the most part, has been. But there's guys out there on the waiver wire that are better options. So check that out as well. The next guy I'm looking to drop here, tight end, is Jonnu Smith of the Tennessee Titans. He didn't play last week because of the knee injury. And we don't know if his status here heading into Week 14 is Smith. But Smith, he was a touchdown-dependent tight end as well. This guy, he had a bad slump of stretches from Week 6 to Week 8 where he scored under 5 fantasy points each ball game. And then Week 12, he had no fantasy points. He put up the goose egg versus Indy in a game where Tennessee put up 45 points. And then versus Cleveland, he didn't play. And now with Jacksonville, it's a great matchup. But teams are already starting to drop Jonnu Smith as I'm recording this video. He's been dropped in 17% of leagues here. And this is a guy, like I said, he's touchdown dependent. I've been saying this every time I talk about him. He's the 4th guy in the pecking order over there in that Tennessee offense. It goes Henry, A.J. Brown, and Corey Davis, then Smith. So Smith, if he's out again, or if you don't have an IR spot, or if you got a guy on the waiver wire like a Logan Thomas, this is the move to make to drop Smith heading into the playoffs here in Week 14. And the third and final tight end I'm looking to drop here is a guy who's been on this list the last few weeks, but people still own him for whatever reason. They're hoping he breaks out, and that's Austin Hooper of the Cleveland Browns. He's owned in 66% of fantasy leagues still, and since he came back off the injury in Week 10, he's only had 1 fantasy game over 9 fantasy points, and in Week 13 in a plus matchup versus Tennessee that gave up the 7th most fantasy points to tight ends, Austin Hooper only had 2 catches for 24 yards. That's not going to get the job done. His team scored 41 points in that game. And for him to only do that, he's a guy I'm just going to steer away from. The Browns' offense is run heavy, obviously, or Jarvis Landry getting all the targets. And now Hooper's got a tough matchup in Week 14 versus Baltimore. So Hooper, he's owned in way too many leagues, and he's a guy that should be dropped. So that's a few tight ends I'm going to drop here heading into Week 14.